There are not many things better than your starting wide receiver catching a 60-yard bomb for a touchdown late in the game to give your fantasy football team a victory. And I say that because it leads to immediately texting your opponent this. Or maybe this. Heck, maybe even this one. Either way, it's those wide receivers that possess that game-breaking ability that we're just drawn to in fantasy football. So today, let me show you how to find those wide receivers that just have a knack for the big play. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone is doing well out there today, we're going to be talking about how can we identify some of those wide receivers in fantasy football that just have that game-breaking ability. We really need to figure out what wide receivers out there get those deep catchable balls and get them most frequently. Now, by looking for this type of wide receiver, I wouldn't classify these guys as the safest picks in fantasy football. Those are different shows that we'll probably do here in the next week or so. The guys that we talk about today may be a little bit more big play dependent, and that's okay. Because when it comes to fantasy football, you need to have a little bit of risk in your lineup, right? We want to have that safe core, but enough risk built in that it can really push us over the top at times. We just need to make sure that we find the right guys that fit that description. Now, I can hear a lot of people out there always saying, Jake, how do you know this process that we're going to be going through today? How do we know it even works? And honestly, I want to answer that for you. So let me start off by asking you this question. When you think about some of the biggest game-breaking wide receivers in the NFL, who are some of the names that come to mind? For me, it's guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr. Now, if you agree with that, if you agree those four names right there are among some of the best when it comes to being a game-breaking wide receiver, perfect, because those four guys all finished inside the top 10 of this exercise today. So if the best guys, the guys that are proven to go out there and be those top names, if they're finishing highly, we know we're looking at the right stuff. But you already know guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., you already know they're great fantasy options. You don't need me to make a video telling you that. But what makes this type of video important is we're looking for the other underlying guys that have similar traits to these top performers. That's why we're watching these types of shows. Now, before I dive into the content here today, let me ask you one more question. Do you think that you could beat me in a best ball league? Well, we're about to find out this offseason. Do you already have an Underdog account? If not, now is the perfect time to do so. Head over to underdogfantasy.com or download the app. Create a new account using the referral code HEADLINERS when you do so. Then all you got to do is make your minimum $10 deposit, and you'll be able to join some of my upcoming best ball leagues. Not just that, they're going to give you a first-time deposit bonus of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, plus they're going to give you a free player pick'em. Now, I'm going to be posting links to leagues here very soon. They're going to be in descriptions of videos. They're going to be on our community tab as well. So that should tell you, if you're not already subscribed here, you need to be so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming drafts. But all right, let's go ahead and dive into what we're going to be looking at here today. Now, if you find yourself right now more excited than a pig, you need to hit the like button because we're about to dive in. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. I took 55 of the top wide receivers in fantasy football. I then ranked them 1 to 55 in the 5 metrics I'm about to tell you here in today's show. That's how we're going to find those game-breaking wide receivers. After we go through all 5 metrics, we'll total up their rankings for all 5 stats and see who finished the highest across the board. Now, obviously, just because they did it last year does not mean they're going to do it for sure again this year. Things change, players change teams, they may be coming off of major injuries as well. Maybe their team added a huge piece this offseason. So we will do this exercise and then go through each player and see if we think they can do it again in 2025. Now, I always try to use metrics on a per touch basis. I don't want the guys that are out there just dominating in volume, really excelling in all of these exercises. We're trying to find the underlying names as well. So the metrics we're going to be looking at in today's show are as follows. How about catchable target rate? Targets are great, but if we're a little bit more reliant on big plays, we at least need the targets they're getting to be catchable. How about ADOT? Average depth of target. It's really hard to bust a big play when you're getting the ball right around the line of scrimmage all the time. We need chances down the field. How about yak per reception? That's right, yards after the catch per reception. Once the ball is in their hands, how much are they making things happen? Then we're looking for the actual big plays, receptions of at least 20 yards or more. Who has already shown us that they are capable of getting these big plays most frequently? And then lastly, fantasy points per target. We need big time scoring, so we need the highest points per target that we can get. And I say that because we're not relying on volume, we need production. So if you really think about it, we're finding the guys that get quality volume deeper down the field and then actually do something with the ball in their hands. So let's go ahead and start off with catchable target rate. Now, obviously, I can't fit all 55 names here on the screen at once. It would end up looking like the fine print on a pharmaceutical commercial. So let's just go ahead and dive in to the top 25 here in catchable target rate. Now, when we do that, the first thing I notice is the first two names on the list. Rashee Rice had a catchable target rate of 89.7%. That is redonkulous. But remember, he didn't play a full season in 2024, and there's a lot of things going against him in 2025. Coming off a major injury, we know he has some off-field issues as well, but if he's on the field, good Lord, his balls are catchable. Then we got Jayden Reed. 84% of his targets were actually catchable as well. The biggest problem for Jayden Reed, he didn't receive enough targets each and every game. Another guy, if he gets volume, he produces. We've seen his name pop up all over videos this offseason. He just needs consistent volume, and that's really hard to rely upon right now in Green Bay. We'll talk about him probably a little bit later. Then we got guys that we kind of expect, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, they're both 80 plus, and that is huge right there. Then we continue to go down the list. We got guys like Devontae Smith at 79.8, T. Higgins at 79.8, Ladd McConkey at 79.5, followed by Marvin Mims, a name that a lot of people aren't talking about a lot this offseason. We may talk about him more in this video. Then we got guys like JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs, all over 75%, which is great. Then we have the guys that are verge 75%, like Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett. That could change a little bit now. He's in Tennessee. Then we got Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp, who's now in Seattle, Brian Thomas Jr., DJ Moore, Jawan Jennings, the 1A wide receiver in San Francisco, A.J. Brown, Josh Downs, and then Drake London. Some great catchable targets for these top 25 guys. But all right, now, how far are they getting it down the field? Here are the top 25 finishers in average depth of target. Right at the top, Rashid Shaheed. It should not be a surprise. We talked about him all last year in the offseason, about the potential for big plays between him and Derek Carr. The problem is, Derek Carr ain't the quarterback no more, and there ain't very many good quarterbacks in New Orleans to begin with. That number may be really hard for him to reproduce in 2025. Then a little bit of a surprise here. I wasn't expecting Calvin Ridley to have an average depth of target of 15.3 yards. That's huge for Calvin Ridley. And now if he gets improved quarterback play with Cam Ward, we could be in line for a surprise year from Calvin Ridley. Then we got Keon Coleman at 15.2. Not a big surprise there. It seemed like the guy was catching one pass a game. It was a big play, and that was about it. Does he see more volume this year? Then we had Roma Dunze at 13.9. He's in line for more targets in 2025. Then Christian Kirk, he's now in Houston. How about Rashad Bateman, a name that a lot of people are talking about this offseason? 13.6 yards on average depth of target. He's kind of the big play guy in this offense down the field. Then Terry McLaurin, Marvin Harrison Jr., George Pickens, he's now in Dallas. Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, now in Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers, still in an offense led by Arthur Smith, and that's terrifying. How about Jordan Addison, then Calvin Austin at 12.4. More of the bigger play threat in this offense last year. Then we had Romeo Doubs, Darnell Mooney, A.J. Brown, followed by Mike Evans, Brian Thomas Jr., Tyreek Hill, Ricky Pearsall at 11.4, Jameson Williams at 11.2. Then we rounded out with Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, a couple of Browns right there, and then Michael Pittman and Drake London once again to round out our top 25. This in average depth of target. How far down the field are they by the time they get the target thrown to them? So this is something that we're really trying to use to identify the big play makers, which will now take us to yards after the catch per reception. Who out there can make more happen with the ball after getting it further down the field already? The guys that are getting the deeper average depth of target, now that they've got the ball, can they make something happen? When we pull up the top 25 here, holy crap, it's Marvin Mims at 12 6.2 yards after the catch per reception. 4 yards more than the guy in second place, who is another big play guy in Jameson Williams. Marvin Mims had some huge plays down the stretch, and if he can acquire more targets this season, and we've already seen Bo Nix being capable of throwing the ball down the field, Marvin Mims could be a huge steal on draft day. Jameson Williams, we kind of expect to be up here. How about Deebo Samuel? How many people realize that over the last few years in San Francisco, Deebo Samuel was receiving the ball close to, if not behind the line of scrimmage, even in the passing game? The fact that he's getting 8 yards after the catch per reception, if they utilize him more down the field this year in Washington, we could be in for another surprise from Deebo Samuel. Then we got Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, a couple Buffalo Bills. Then Chris Godwin, Rashee Rice at 7 yards after the catch. We saw that a lot, right? Not going very deep down the field consistently, but getting the ball quickly and then making things happen. Followed by his teammate, Xavier Worthy. Jaden Reed popping up here again. Then Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, all hovering right around 6 yards after the catch per reception, which is great. Followed by Zay Flowers, DJ Moore, Josh Downs, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, Rashid Shaheed once again, those big plays that we talked about a little bit earlier. Ladd McConkey at 5 yards after the catch. That number really boosted up towards the end of the year. Followed by Rome Odunze, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and then Garrett Wilson to round out our top 25. But now, let's go ahead and see who has racked up those receptions of at least 20 yards or more. And when we do that, the guy at the top of the list should not be a surprise. It's Justin Jefferson with 28 receptions of at least 20 plus yards. But after him, it may be a little bit of a surprise. How about Darnell Mooney at 21, finishing second in this metric? We know that at times to start the season, Kirk Cousins was finding Darnell Mooney. Will it happen this year with Michael Penix? The overall offense has to be a little bit better when it comes to the passing game, so it would not surprise me. Then we have DK Metcalf at 20. Somewhat scary because of the new offense that he's going to be in there in Pittsburgh. But we see George Pickens here a little bit further down the list at 17, not too big of a difference from 20, and he's kind of going to fill that role in this offense with Pickens being gone. Then we got guys like Jamar Chase, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas Jr., Jameson Williams, A.J. Brown. Here's where we see George Pickens followed by Cortland Sutton. Not a lot of surprises right here at the top of this metric. Then Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Malik Nabers, more guys that you would expect. Then Jacoby Myers, Jaden Reed, once again. It's hard to think that the guy even had 15 receptions the way that we feel from 2024. He had 15 receptions of at least 20 yards last year. He was basically getting one per game. Then we got Ladd McConkey, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, JSN at 14, Devontae Smith at 14, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Harrison both at 14, and then Jerry Jeudy with 13 there to round up the top 25 of the players who had the most receptions of at least 20 yards, which means we only have one metric left, and that is fantasy points per target. What I like to call getting the biggest bang for your buck. Who's scoring the most points per target? And look at the top two names on this list, Jaden Reed and Marvin Mims. I'm telling you right now, if Jaden Reed were to get 100 plus targets a year, the guy's finishing as a top 10 wide receiver every single year. The problem is, he just can't get 100 targets a year consistent. At least he can't get consistent volume weekly, and it's a huge headache. Marvin Mims, though, at 2.49. Rashad Bateman at 2.43. These are not names that a lot of people expect to be up here. A lot of people are expecting guys like Jamar Chase, who is fifth here. They're expecting guys like A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're not expecting Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims, and Rashad Bateman to dominate this metric, but honestly, they did. Then we had Jameson Williams. Then we followed with Jamar Chase and Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. How about Rashee Rice once again popping up at 2.24? Then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Godwin. He was getting over 2 points per target last year before his injury, followed by his teammate Mike Evans at 2.19. McConkey at 2.15 with Jordan Addison. Then we had guys like Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, some guys that you would expect to be here. Calvin Austin, T. Higgins, Ricky Pearsall. He didn't get much of an opportunity, but he was scoring over 2 fantasy points per target himself. Then Rashid Shaheed, Keon Coleman, Puka Nacua, Stephon Diggs now in New England, and then Xavier Worthy in Kansas City. So now that we've gone gone through and put all these guys up against each other who had the highest combined finish across all metrics. Well, I'm glad you asked, because here are our top 20 overall finishers when taking into account all of these metrics. At the top, Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions, followed by number 2, Jayden Reed. This should not be a surprise if you've been paying attention here the last 10 minutes or so. Then we got guys like Jamar Chase. We expect him to finish high in these metrics. A.J. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins. Then we got Keon Coleman, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Mims ended up in the top 20, alongside Mike Evans and DK Metcalf, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Zay Flowers, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, and finally to round out our top 20 overall finishers, Rashee Rice there in Kansas City. Now, some of these names are expected, right? Do you need to be told that Jamar Chase is good and that he should probably be drafted early? No, he's being drafted early for a reason. So let's go ahead and take a look at these players' projected ADP. Where is it currently sitting at here for 2025? So we see Jameson Williams in the 5th round, Jayden Reed in the 9th, Jamar Chase in the 1st, A.J. Brown in the 2nd, BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. in the 1st, Ladd McConkey towards the end of the 2nd, Devontae Smith in the 6th, Nico in the 2nd, Keon Coleman in the 11th, Justin Jefferson in the 1st, McLaurin in the 3rd, Mims in the 13th, Evans in the 3rd, DK Metcalf in the 5th, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 1st, Zay Flowers in the 5th, Jackson Smith-Njigba in the 3rd round, Darnell Mooney in the 10th, Bateman in the 13th, and Rashee Rice in the 4th. So because we aren't helping very many people out there by saying some of these studs are good, let's go ahead and remove everyone with an ADP inside the first 2 rounds. So if your ADP is in the 1st or 2nd round, we're removing them from the list. This is what we have left. Jameson Williams, Jayden Reed, Devontae Smith, Keon Coleman, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Mims, Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Then we got Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, and Rashee Rice. Now, we also mentioned at the start of the show that things change every year. So how about Jayden Reed? We all know of the headache that was Jayden Reed in 2024. If he gets targets, he's an absolute stud, but it is so hard to assume, and they just drafted another wide receiver in Green Bay in the 1st round in Matthew Golden. It feels like there are just too many red flags here for Jayden Reed to consider, so I'm going to remove him from the list as well. How about DK Metcalf? No longer in Seattle. It's a different quarterback here with Aaron Rodgers now, who hasn't looked great for multiple years. And now we also, on top of all that, have to deal with an Arthur Smith offense in Pittsburgh. There is just too much unknown, so I'm removing DK Metcalf right now. Now, when it came to Terry McLaurin, they added Deebo Samuel to the offense here this offseason. But Washington had 117 targets vacated at the wide receiver position, so I don't see him really being impacted too much in that offense. I feel like they have enough firepower, so I'm going to leave Terry McLaurin on the list. So here's what we're ending up with. Jameson Williams first. He's coming off a 1,000-yard season, and he missed 2 games last year. He's in line for a bigger year this year, and he is definitely a player who's on my radar. Then we have Devontae Smith. He always seems to finish so well when we talk about metrics in shows like this. My biggest worry is how much they run in Philadelphia and the target share in Philadelphia. It's not just Devontae Smith, it's A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert and a whole lot of Saquon Barkley. But when it comes to big plays, Devontae Smith needs to be in the conversation. How about Keon Coleman? They added Josh Palmer, but I don't believe he's enough to just completely write off Keon Coleman, especially for where he's being drafted. He's a big play machine in an offense that can put up points, so he needs some attention. Then we get to Terry McLaurin, and like I said, the addition of Deebo, I believe, actually helps out Terry McLaurin. More defensive attention is going the way of Deebo. It's going to free up Terry. Now, last year, the only other option they had was Diami Brown, and not a lot of opposing defenses were overly scared of him. I think Terry's in line for a big year. Then we got Marvin Mims, kind of my wild card here of the group. He had some monster plays last year. Now, the team did bring in Evan Ingram, but Marvin Mims is so cheap, it's very intriguing. Then we got Mike Evans, reliable here. Dude is like the tomater of fantasy football. 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns a year with big plays almost every single week. Then Zay Flowers. I know he was a headache in 2024, and this is kind of why. He's a little bit more big play dependent. He has the talent. He just needs more consistency. I'm not worried about them adding DeAndre Hopkins. The dude is old, but Zay Flowers, probably going to be a little bit boomer bust each week. Then we got JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, and he's got a great opportunity in 2025. Cooper Kupp isn't what he was a couple years ago, and JSN is going to be the binky in this offense for Sam Darnold in Seattle. Then we have Darnell Mooney. I wouldn't be surprised to see this offense be a little bit more high-powered in Atlanta this year with Michael Penix at quarterback. London is going to rack up a ton of targets. He's going to be the safer option, but there are going to be weeks that Darnell goes full Mooney. Then we got Rashad Bateman. The fact that there are 2 Ravens on this list is absolutely crazy. It's because the volume is so low, the output needs to be there in the form of big plays. We saw it from Rashad Bateman at times last year. We will once again this year. And then we round it out with Rashee Rice. If he is fully healthy and does not get suspended, he will probably be the steal of the draft. If he plays anywhere near 15 games in 2025, he could end up, yes, a league winner. All right, so there you have some of the biggest game-breaking wide receivers in the NFL here, potentially for 2025. Now, what name in today's video stood out most to you? Leave a comment down below in the comment section. I would love to have some discussions with you. I am trying to be as interactive as I possibly can this entire summer. If you leave a comment on one of my videos, I am trying to respond in some way to every single one of them. This has always been a channel of the people, and it's going to remain that way, so leave me those comments down below in the comment section. If you haven't already, hit the like button as well, please. It really helps us out here in the off season. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day, but hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and then most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.